She did the thing you're not supposed to do, the thing almost everyone does anyway. She stepped into a hot shower one evening without taking her contact lenses out first. She closed her eyes, let the water run over her face, rinsed her hair, and thought absolutely nothing of it. Millions of people do exactly this every single day. 2 weeks later, she was sitting in an eye specialist's chair in agony, half blind in one eye, while doctors treated her for a disease she didn't have. And underneath those useless drops hidden inside her own cornea, a microscopic living thing was slowly eating her eye from the surface inward. It had come out of her showerhead, and by the time anyone worked out what it really was, it already had a 2-week head start. If you wear contact lenses, you have almost certainly done what she did. You've kept them in during a shower. You've rinsed a lens under the tap when you dropped it in the sink. You've gone swimming without thinking twice, or worn them in a hot tub, or splashed your face at the pool. There's a warning against all of it, buried somewhere in a leaflet nobody reads, and it sounds like exactly the kind of overcautious rule you're allowed to ignore. Water is clean, it comes out of the tap, and worrying about it seems almost absurd. She thought the same way, because it's completely reasonable to think that way. She was young, healthy, and careful about most things. Wearing her lenses in the shower wasn't recklessness. It was just a small convenience, a habit built over years of nothing ever going wrong. And nothing did go wrong, not that night, and not for several days afterward. The danger with what she'd let into her eye is that it doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly, and it takes its time. For the better part of 2 weeks, she felt completely fine and went about her life with no idea that anything had changed. The thing in her eye was already feeding. To understand what she'd let in, you have to know that the water we treat as clean is not empty. Ordinary tap water, the water in your shower, your pool, your hot tub, the puddle in your yard, is full of microscopic life. Most of it is harmless. But one particular organism, common in water and soil all over the world, is not. It lives in lakes and rivers, in soil and dust, and even in the slick biofilm that coats the inside of household pipes, storage tanks, and shower heads, which is part of why the water that looks perfectly clean coming out of your tap is never truly sterile. It's called Acanthamoeba. It's a single-celled amoeba, a tiny predator that normally spends its whole life drifting through water, eating bacteria. On its own, it wants nothing to do with you. The problem starts only when it ends up somewhere it was never meant to be. The surface of a human eye. Your cornea, the clear dome at the very front of your eye, is one of the most sensitive surfaces on your entire body, and it's normally protected by your tear film and by the simple fact that nothing stays pressed against it. A contact lens changes that. It sits directly on the cornea for hours at a time, and it can trap water and grit and microscopic organisms right up against the surface. All it takes is one tiny scratch, a microabrasion so small you would never feel it, often caused by the lens itself. And if an Acanthamoeba happens to be sitting there when that scratch opens, it works its way in. Once it reaches the living tissue of the cornea, it does the only thing it knows how to do. It feeds. And here is what makes this organism so uniquely stubborn. It has 2 forms. There's the active form, the one that moves and eats, and that form alone would be frightening enough. But when conditions turn hostile, when it comes under attack, it can transform into a second form. A cyst. It pulls itself into a tough armored shell and goes dormant, sealed and waiting, almost impossible to kill. Hold on to that detail, because it's the reason this story unfolds the way it does. For now, she felt nothing dramatic. Just a faint, nagging sense that something wasn't quite right with her eye. It began as the most ordinary complaint in the world, something in her eye. A gritty, foreign feeling, as if an eyelash or a speck of dust had lodged itself under her lens and wouldn't come out. So she did what anyone does. She took the lens out, rinsed her eye, blinked hard, and checked the mirror. Nothing there. She put it down to a stray lash and moved on. But the feeling didn't leave. Over the next day or two, that small irritation grew into something sharper. Her eye began to redden and water. It turned sensitive to light, so that a bright room or a phone screen made her wince. And that sensation of something stuck in her eye only got stronger, no matter how many times she flushed it out with water, which, though she had no way of knowing it, was the exact wrong thing to keep doing. By now she understood this wasn't a stray eyelash. This was an infection of some kind, and it was getting worse fast, so she did the responsible thing and went to get it looked at by a doctor. And this is where the truly frightening part of this story begins, not with the amoeba, but with the diagnosis. When she described her symptoms, a red, painful, light-sensitive eye, the doctor did what the odds told him to do, because there's a very common eye infection that looks almost exactly like this in its early stages. It's caused by the herpes simplex virus, the same family of virus behind cold sores, and it can flare up in the eye as something called herpes keratitis. It is vastly more common than what she actually had. Acanthamoeba keratitis is rare. A doctor might see a handful of cases in an entire career, or none at all. Herpes of the eye, they see all the time. So when the early signs matched, she was diagnosed with a herpes infection and sent home with antiviral eye drops. And that decision, reasonable as it was, is what handed the amoeba the room it needed, because the drops weren't failing due to a weak dose or the wrong schedule. They were failing because they were fighting the wrong enemy entirely. Antivirals do nothing to an amoeba. So, while she carefully put those drops in, trusting that she was being treated, the acanthamoeba underneath simply kept feeding, kept spreading, and kept burrowing deeper into her cornea, completely untouched. This is the cruelest feature of the disease, and there's a specific clue that so often gets missed: the pain. In Acanthamoeba keratitis, the pain is wildly out of proportion to what a doctor can actually see. Early on, her eye might have looked only mildly irritated, the kind of thing a virus could easily explain. And yet she was in genuine agony. A deep, relentless, grinding pain far worse than the visible damage should ever cause. That mismatch, terrible pain paired with modest findings, is one of the strongest warning signs for this exact infection. But it's subtle, and it's easy to read as a patient who's simply being sensitive, and so the days kept passing with the wrong drops going in. Before I show you what was happening under those useless drops, take 1 second and hit the subscribe button, because a new case like this one goes up on this channel every week. And if you wear contact lenses, the rest of this video is exactly the part you'll want to remember. Now, back to her eye, and the thing that was still feeding. As the days turned into a second and then a third week of the wrong treatment, her eye got dramatically worse. The pain became unbearable. Her vision in that eye started to blur and cloud, and then a specific, sinister sign appeared, the kind of thing that makes an eye specialist stop and go cold. On her cornea, a gray, ring-shaped mark began to form. A ring infiltrate. It's a hallmark of advanced Acanthamoeba keratitis, a circle of damaged, inflamed tissue that traces the path of the amoeba as it works its way outward through the cornea. It is not something a herpes infection produces, and when a specialist finally saw it, the entire picture snapped into focus. They set aside the assumption she'd been living under and went looking for actual proof. That usually means gently scraping a tiny sample from the surface of the cornea, or using a special microscope that can peer down into the layers of the living eye, hunting for the amoeba itself or for those armored cysts. And there it was, an amoeba, along with its dormant shelled offspring, dug into her cornea. After weeks of being treated for the wrong disease, she finally had the right diagnosis. But the relief of an answer came bolted to a much harder truth. Now that they knew what it was, they had to explain to her how brutal it is to get rid of. Because this is where that earlier detail comes back. The cyst. Killing the active, feeding amoeba is hard enough on its own, but those tough, dormant cysts can shrug off the very disinfectants and drops meant to destroy them. They can sit inside the cornea, shelled and waiting, and then wake back up and restart the whole infection the moment treatment eases off. So her treatment became a siege. The medicines that actually work against Acanthamoeba are specialized antiseptic drops. And to stand any chance against both the active amoebae and their cysts, they have to be used relentlessly. In the worst early stretch, that can mean putting drops in the eye every single hour, around the clock, waking through the night, for weeks on end. And even then, the total course doesn't run for days, it runs for months. Half a year of treatment is not unusual for a serious case. It is a slow, exhausting war of attrition against something microscopic that simply refuses to fully die. She fought that war, and because the amoeba had been given a 2-week head start by the misdiagnosis, plus more weeks before the right treatment took hold, the damage to her cornea was severe. In cases like hers, when the infection scars the cornea badly enough to steal vision, the last resort is surgery, a corneal transplant, replacing the clouded window of the eye with healthy donor tissue. Some people go through all of this and still keep their eye and much of their sight. Others, in the most severe cases, lose the eye completely. She was one of the fortunate ones. After months of fighting, and everything medicine could throw at it, she kept her eye. But it came at the cost of a long, painful ordeal, lasting damage she will carry, and a level of fear about an everyday habit that most people never think about even once. And the thing that should stay with you is how avoidable all of it was. This is a rare infection, and you are not likely to ever get it. But the people who do get it are overwhelmingly contact lens wearers, and the triggers are almost always the same short list: rinsing lenses under the tap, showering in them, and swimming or sitting in a hot tub while wearing them. So the single most important rule in this entire story is blunt and easy to remember. Water and contact lenses do not mix. Not shower water, not pool water, not tap water, not even the bottled water you'd happily drink. If your lenses are in, keep water out, and only ever clean and store them in proper contact lens solution. There's a second lesson too, and it might be the one that saves someone's eye. If you wear lenses and you ever develop eye pain that feels far worse than your eye looks, especially after any contact with water, don't just accept the first, most common diagnosis and leave it there. Ask the question directly. Could this be Acanthamoeba? Most of the time it won't be. But on the rare occasion that it is, saying that word early, before weeks slip away treating the wrong thing, can be the difference between a scare and losing an eye. It started in the most ordinary place imaginable. A warm shower at the end of a normal day with her contacts still in, the same way she'd done it 100 times before. There was no exotic danger, no far-off country, no rare stroke of bad luck, just clean-looking water and a habit almost everyone shares. That's what makes this one worth remembering. If this made you rethink wearing your lenses anywhere near water, do me a quick favor and tap the like button, because it helps this reach the next person who's about to step into the shower without a second thought. And subscribe, because every week I break down another true case of the human body under siege. And if you thought a microscopic amoeba in the eye was disturbing, there's a close cousin of it that slips into the body through water and travels somewhere far worse than the eye. That case is on screen now. And if it's the eye itself that grips you, watch what a living worm did behind a traveler's eye in Vietnam. Both are waiting for you right now.